It's once again every Zero player's favorite time of the month where that one person on Reddit gets a chance to make another meme video. It's tier list time. Welcome back once again, everybody. Today we're going to be taking a look at the kind of new meta for JP0. We're already kind of almost 3 weeks, actually yeah, about 3 weeks into this meta, and it's been enough time to kind of reflect, and a lot of the questions that people had on like, is this going to be good, is this actually a good deck, etc., are mostly kind of answered by a bunch of people in the community. There's no big tournaments happening in JP, but at the very least, you know, we do have a lot of ranked going on and a lot of like fan run tournaments, so we can kind of get a general glimpse of what the meta is. So as usual, we're gonna do the very typical thing of running through the lists provided by the other websites, the Japanese websites, which are GameWith and GameBox, which will help us kind of understand what the new meta looks like. So we can see here, we're starting with GameWith as usual. They're putting Jewel Knights as tier 1, Magus as tier 2, as well as Celestials, and then tier 3 is Pacifica, and tier 4 is Sanctuary together with Prisms. Sanctuary being, you know, a pretty fun high rolly deck. And so their new tier 1 is Eradicators and Jewels. Tier 2 being Azel, Glory, MLB, Dungaree, Magus, Celestials, Spikes, and Blau Ethics. So these are kind of the deck lists that really showed up at the Zero Championship. We didn't have that last month during the meta-analysis, sorry, during the tier list. Then tier 3, Pacifica, Magatsu, Tsukiyomi, Gold, so Liberators, The End, and it just kind of continues. No other new decks here. So generally just stuff. Oh yeah, there we go. Sanctuary Guard is there. And so yeah, and Prisms literally bottom of the barrel. Very unfortunate. The problem with Prisms is that it just doesn't really do anything outside of its one play, which is Break Ride, Labrador, and that's it. The deck doesn't really do anything after that. Taking a look at the GameBox one, for some reason GameBox got like marked as a phishing site when I entered it today, which was kind of weird. Here are the tournament decks. So tier 1 would be Eradicators, Azel, Glory. Tier 2 being MLB, Tsukiyomi, Dudley, Ethics, Dungaree, The Blood, as well as Shadows and The End. And now for rank fight, they say Eradicators, Azel, as well as Glory. And then tier 2, Jewel Knights. So this is like Turbo Salome, the one that like searches self-damagers, and then this is just Jewel Knights, I believe, with Gancelot. Then we have Blaus, Spikes, Dungaree. So a lot of, generally we see an agreement. Here we see more Celestials. And so looking at this Magus, seeing far lower here than the one for GameWith. Labrador down here. And so yeah, overall, you know, we kind of get a good glimpse. So now, let's take a look at what I think this meta looks like. And so today, this time around, I don't have too much input from other sources. I did ask the usual people that assist me with this, but they haven't been playing too much this month, and therefore don't have too much of an opinion about this meta, or like haven't seen enough of the other decks. So we're gonna kind of wing it based on my own experience. I've been playing a fair bit, especially during the first half of the month with Jewel Knights, and so I think I have a somewhat good impression, but it's not going to change too much from what we had last month. So it is definitely that kind of set where it's like it didn't really shake up the meta too much, it just added more to it. So Tsukiyomi actually got some new toys with Magus cards, so you can either run Magus Tsukiyomi or Tsukiyomi with some Maguses, or just like pure Magus with Tsukiyomi. So there's like 2 variants, but Tsukiyomi we saw kind of show up in the top cut of the Zero Championship Summer, and then also just overall show up very well. You know, the problem is still that, you know, it needs to have that setup, it needs to have a good stack, it needs to, you know, it needs to hit that really good time bomb, you know, that this deck can do. But it has new variants now with the Magus, but I think I'll leave it at top of tier 2 here. Spikes, also kind of falling into the same batch. Still very strong deck with the Break Ride. Definitely felt like the deck that you saw everywhere during especially the end of the last set after the Zero Championships, but now going to set 10, not so much actually. The End, kind of, you know, the squad here, kind of their usual spot. You know, they're always kind of there. Every time I kind of say they feel kind of slow, you know, and they feel like they don't really deserve to be here anymore, but they're still good decks that can beat a lot of other decks as well. Blaus. So this is Ethics Blaus, but I was too lazy to change the image from Illumino. Tier 2 for sure this time. You know, I did say it was... I still kind of hold the same feelings, even after seeing it at the Zero Championship Finals, you know, win the whole thing. I still feel like it's a high rolly deck, but, you know, When it pops off, it's here. When it doesn't, it's here. So this time, let's put it here, you know? Azel, I think, still stays in tier 1. Still a great deck. Not being played much, actually. I haven't really run into it that much overall. I think a lot of people just kind of got bored of it, but it's still very powerful. Still, you know, able to pop rears, put in a lot of offensive power, just like not have to call too much from hand, plussing from Din Drain, all that kind of stuff. Polaris, similar spot as usual, you know, always like a good tier 2 deck. Glory, still amazing. I don't think that has changed. So definitely feels like it's still a great deck. And I just realized while doing that for some reason the new deck images didn't load in, so luckily we got that in there. Coral, sadly the new support for Bermuda in the new set didn't do much for Coral. Gave it a little bit of support, but doesn't really have that kind of late game finish power that the deck needed. The blood feels like it's falling off. It really feels like it's been falling off. It's still a good deck, so you can like argue for it to be here, but you know, without making this too bloated, and you know, can still kind of edge out wins like that. But definitely in terms of representation has been very low, but I guess also put it here. Dungaree kind of feels like the same, you know, kind of going in this line as well. Liberators, again, I said this before, still needs new support. That hasn't changed whatsoever. Eradicators, absolutely tier 1 now. We saw them in almost every player. 6 out of 8 of the top 8 players at the Zero Championship Summer brought Eradicators. They're still a huge threat, and keep in mind that we don't know the content of the next set, 11, just yet, but we can expect it to be Sweep Command and Cho-Oh and cards like that, and Cho-Oh is going to be a huge boost to this deck. If you know what Cho-Oh does, this deck is going to get boosted even more. So I definitely think this deck is still tier 1, still a huge dominator. Genesis needs more support. It's decent, but again, it needs more support. Magatsu is an interesting list, an interesting deck. I think in the interest of not... you know what, I'll keep it. I'll let there be a fat tier 2. I don't know. It's always like this kind of argument of like, do I make a fat tier 2 or do I knock down some decks because it's like their time in the spotlight has died down, you know? Like, honestly speaking, the End in Shadows don't feel like they can compete that well anymore, but they still do. They still manage to get wins here and there because they have tools that other decks don't. And so, you know, you kind of want to keep them in tier 2 because they are something you can bring into tournaments. They are something you can bring. Like, we still saw these decks in the Zero Championship Summer with set 9. So it's like, set 10 didn't shake up the meta that much to make them completely fall out of favor, so they still kind of sit there. Anyway, Magatsu is a really interesting one because this is a new event clan that got brought in. Everyone was like, oh, it's it's Murakumo. Nobody's like, it's not gonna be good. It's always bad, you know, until the V series, blah blah blah. They managed to buff it insanely well. If you've seen my Murakumo event video, you'll have seen how much they buffed this clan. It's able to just like do pretty unfair things in early game and then continue that throughout the game. So I feel like Murakumo is a very solid tier 2, maybe a bit lower down here, but I think it's definitely like a very solid tier 2. MLB, I think maybe we can bump it up a little bit, but MLB definitely is tier 2 now. It has actually dropped because Jewel Knights. I expected nothing. I love Jewel Knights, but I also know for a fact that in the TCG they got outcrept very fast. They became meh very quickly. They're already kind of meh to begin with because they just, you know, they were just pretty MLB with a limit break attached, and Salome was 10k base, and we didn't have Julia for ages and all that stuff. In Zero, they made Salome 11k base and they gave us Julia. Two important factors that have pushed this deck into tier 1. There's 2 different variants for it, and you can either run it with Ganslot and Blaster Blade or run it pure. I personally think, as I said in my Jewel Knight video, that the pure variant is better because Julia, for the same amount of counterblast, nets you a lot more than Ganslot Blaster Blade does. But, you know, that's you know, an argument for the ages. There's a lot of people that will argue both ways, and so I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not trying to start an argument here, but that's just kind of like my stance on it. Jewel Knight, at first I was hesitant to say it's tier 1, but then every, like, you know, you saw Game With say it's tier 1. I think Gamebox says it's tier 2, but honestly, Namuru himself, who runs the website, has been playing just Jewel Knights in ranked, so I don't know if he's just trying to, you know, kind of keep the hype down a little bit, but I definitely think Jewel Knights is deserving of the tier 1 slot. It has multi-attack, it has all the deck searching, it has base crit, multiple base crit. It literally has so much. It can even have retire if you run the Ganslot engine. Like, this deck has it all, and I recommend watching my Jewel Knight video. I went into quite a lot of depth with this list. Celestials also have 2 variants. I would put them in tier 2 as well. Feels like a very capable deck. Has multi-attack, has huge power, has base crit if you want to build it with Helm. Overall, just has a lot going for it. It feels like a very powerful deck that can actually, you know, it has different builds, has toolboxing thanks to Sariel. Like, it really has a lot going for it. I think like this deck is actually capable of a lot, and I think that that is actually quite cool about it. You know, it's just Angels really feel like this is kind of the best that they've been in a long time, and who would have thought that making Zerakiel's buff a global buff would have actually made the deck better. Then we have Magus, another tier 2. Tier 2 is looking very buff here. So tier 2, because Magus is probably the most relaxing OTT you'll ever play, because you literally just like, you know, you're just sitting there, clicking away. Ooh, trigger on top, okay, I'll leave it. Ooh, normal unit, PG on top, I'll grab it to hand. It's like, it's very much simple. I'm going to be covering it in a video in like the next couple days, so you can check it out. There's several builds. I'm going to be covering the pure build of just Magus, but there are also like builds with, like I said, Tsukuyomi. There's also a build that uses Ichibiyoshi, grade 1 Tsukuyomis and grade 2 Tsukuyomis in order to have like some sort of stack, so like 15 cards stacked, and then that way once you like use your Magus skills, you know the bottom 15 or like the bottom 13 or whatever, but you can basically like you don't have to rely on the Magus skills to actually check the top card all the time. But honestly, the pure build can do that just fine without really losing anything, and I think that that is completely fine. So the deck really feels good. It draws an absolute crap ton. It draws so much. It pluses a lot. It has base crit Vanguard. It has, again, so much card advantage that you can get away with running crits, like a lot of crits, and I mean a lot of crits. So I feel like this deck is honestly quite fun too. Unfortunate, but I already talked about this. Labrador is literally, it has 1 turn, which is Break Ride Labrador, and after that does nothing, which is very unfortunate, but needs more support. But Prisms don't get support for a long time, and it's actually quite a shame, but you know, it is what it is. And then Pacifica, I haven't tested this deck at all. I've only played against it a few times, so I can't really say too much about it, and I don't really have anyone to point you to. Arrow Tanks, I think, hasn't really tested with too much either, but it's been a pretty, like, interesting build, because with the Break Ride, Cross Ride Pacifica, you get to essentially like do 5 attacks in a turn, which is pretty strong, but then like you kind of lose out on the power scaling a little bit, so it feels a bit clunky, but I feel like it has potential, just a little bit unexplored. So definitely this might get bumped up over time, we'll see, but for now it's kind of representing Bermudas in a nice way. But yeah, that's basically it for my tier list for this set. So I think, you know, again, I should have said this at the start. This is my own opinion. This is what I think is the meta from my own playing experience. I've had some people also kind of saying what they think of the meta as well, which has kind of fed into the ideas that I present here. You know, this like tier 2, this ordering doesn't have to be like this. It's not an order necessarily. It's just a general kind of scope of what the meta is. You can quite comfortably bring anything here into ladder. Here, you're going to be kind of sweating, kind of struggling a little bit, but here you can play comfortably, basically, I would say. So yeah, that's kind of the way I wanted to present it this time, and so we'll be back once again next month with set 11, which I personally expect to be like Dauntless Drive, Sweep Command, Revon, and Fortuna. So, you know, we're looking at this getting bumped up, hopefully, and we're looking at, you know, a whole new build for Aquaforce, so like a different build for Narukami on top of that. So, and also Kagero, the end with Dauntless Drive will definitely shoot up here, I think. I would be surprised if it doesn't. So yeah, on that note, that's what I expect to be next set, at least. I mean, I posted my predictions video a while ago, but yeah, anyway, on that note, that's gonna be it for me today, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.